Speak Amazon domain name equals news greater than we think we know this city. A symbol of power. A monument to democracy. Its design seems inevitable. Its location, preordained. But that is a carefully constructed illusion. The truth is buried deep beneath the marble. The true story of America's capital is not one of grand visions. It's a story of a secret deal, struck in the shadows. It's a story of a city built on a malarial swamp. And it's a story of the thousands of forgotten people who paid the price for its existence. This is the story of the deals, the disasters, and the dark truths behind Washington, D.C. The year is 1790. The American Revolution is over. But the victory is fragile. The new United States is not united at all. It's a loose confederation of 13 states. They are drowning in debt from the war. And they are bitterly divided. The government has no permanent home. Congress meets in temporary locations. Philadelphia. New York City. Princeton. Each city lobbies fiercely to become the permanent capital. To host the capital meant power. It meant money. It meant influence. The debate raged. A deadlock paralyzed the new nation. Northern states refused to place the capital in the agrarian South. Southern states feared the power of northern bankers and merchants. The nation was on the brink of collapse before it had even begun. The solution would not be found in a public debate. It would be found at a private dinner party. In a quiet room, away from the public eye. The host was the Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson. His guests were two of the most powerful men in America. James Madison, a leading voice from Virginia. And Alexander Hamilton, the ambitious Secretary of the Treasury. Hamilton had a radical plan. He wanted the new federal government to assume all state debts from the war. This would consolidate federal power. It would create a strong central economy. The northern states loved the idea. They held most of the debt. The southern states, like Virginia, hated it. They had already paid off most of their own debts. They saw it as a northern power grab. A bailout for speculators. The bill was deadlocked in Congress. The nation was at a standstill. That is when the bargain was struck. Over dinner, Jefferson and Madison made Hamilton an offer. A secret trade. They would deliver the southern votes for Hamilton's debt plan. In exchange, Hamilton would deliver the northern votes to place the new capital in the South. Specifically, on a patch of undeveloped land along the Potomac River. It was a location favored by one man above all others, President George Washington. The deal was done. A city for a ledger book. A nation's financial future traded for a capital's location. The public was never told about the true nature of the agreement. The Residence Act of 1790 was passed. It authorized the president to select a site for the new federal city. A 10-mile square of land. Somewhere on the Potomac. A city was born not from a blueprint, but from a backroom bargain. The political puzzle was solved. But the real challenge was just beginning. President Washington selected the exact site. A patch of marshy land, bordered by the Potomac and Anacostia rivers. It was humid. It was infested with mosquitoes. Subject to flooding and disease. To most, it looked like a worthless swamp. But to the men tasked with building a capital, it was a blank canvas. Washington hired a French engineer and artist, Pierre-Charles L'Enfant. L'Enfant had served in the Revolutionary War. He was brilliant. He was arrogant. He did not envision a simple town. He envisioned an imperial city. A capital to rival Paris or Rome. His plan was breathtakingly ambitious. A grid of streets, overlaid with grand, diagonal avenues. Circles and plazas would mark important intersections. The Congress House and the President's House would be the city's focal points. It was a plan built for an empire, not a fledgling republic. The first step was to survey the land. To map the vision onto reality. Andrew Ellicott, a skilled surveyor, was appointed to lead the task. But Ellicott was not alone. He was assisted by a man whose story is almost completely erased from this history. Benjamin Banneker. A free, self-taught African-American astronomer, mathematician, and surveyor. In an era of profound racial prejudice, Banneker's intellect was undeniable. He made the astronomical calculations necessary to establish the city's boundaries. He was a crucial part of the founding team. A black man helping to lay the groundwork for America's capital. But as the surveyors mapped the wilderness, another, darker reality took hold. The question was simple. Who would build this city? Who would clear the forests? Who would dig the foundations? Who would quarry the stone? The federal government had little money. The project was on a tight budget. So they turned to the cheapest labor available. Enslaved African Americans. This is the capital's deepest, most guarded secret. The city that would become a symbol of freedom was built by unfree hands. The federal government didn't own the slaves directly. They rented them. Local slaveholders from Maryland and Virginia signed contracts with the city's commissioners. They hired out their human property for a fee. Hundreds of enslaved men were put to work. They wielded axes to clear the dense forests of Tiber Creek. They dug the clay for millions of bricks by hand. They toiled in the Aqui Creek quarries, cutting the sandstone for the president's house in the Capitol. Their work was grueling. It was dangerous. Their names were not recorded. Their contributions were ignored. They were listed in government ledgers simply as Negro hire. They were the invisible workforce. The unseen architects of a national dream. While L'Enfant planned his grand avenues, these men turned his lines on a map into reality. But L'Enfant's vision was already clashing with the project's commissioners. He refused to show them his master plan. He believed they were too simple-minded to understand it. He ignored property lines. He ordered the demolition of a powerful landowner's house because it blocked one of his avenues. L'Enfant saw himself as an artist. The commissioners saw him as a liability. The tension was about to explode. The breaking point came in 1792. After constant clashes and acts of defiance, Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to L'Enfant. He was fired. The grand visionary was dismissed from his own creation. He took his detailed plans with him. The project was in chaos. It was saved by the incredible memory of Benjamin Banneker. He and Ellicott were able to recreate the majority of L'Enfant's complex designs from memory. The plan survived. But the project was failing. Money was running out. Investors were skeptical. Lot sales, meant to fund construction, were a disaster. The city was a massive construction site, plagued by mud and delays. As the deadline of 1800 approached, a sense of panic set in. This was supposed to be the glorious seat of a new empire. But it was becoming a national embarrassment. In November 1800, the U.S. government officially moved to its new home. The city was not ready. Abigail Adams, the First Lady to live in the president's house, was horrified. The building was unfinished. It was cold and damp. She had to hang laundry to dry in the massive, empty East Room. Outside, the city was a ghost town. The grand avenues were muddy tracks. The streets were lined with a few scattered, unfinished buildings. There were no shops. No amenities. Lawmakers lived in crowded boarding houses. One senator described it as a capital of miserable huts. Another called it a city of magnificent intentions. It was a joke. A failed experiment. Foreign diplomats mocked the fledgling capital. The grand dream, born in a secret deal, seemed destined to die in a swamp. But it survived. Slowly, painstakingly, the city grew. The marble monuments eventually rose from the mud. The vision of L'Enfant, saved by Banneker, was finally realized. Today, Washington, D.C. stands as a testament to power and endurance. But its pristine facade hides its true foundation. A foundation of political compromise. Of a bitter rivalry between vision and reality. And of the forgotten labor of thousands of enslaved people, whose sweat and skill are baked into the very bricks of the city. To understand America's capital, you must look past the monuments. You must look into the shadows. Because the hidden truths of its birth are the truths of the nation itself. Complex. Contradictory. And built on a history we are only now beginning to expose. /Amazon domain/speak